Welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network, compliments of the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, the CBAA, into the CRN. And we also go out on YouTube, we go out on Spotify, we go out on iHeartRadio, and we also have a blog on our website. And I'm welcoming back to the microphone and camera today, Justin Bott, who is the Media Information Officer from Services Australia. Now, Justin, I know you guys have got a ton of resources on your websites and video and blogs and PDF downloads. I mean, it's a wealth of data that's out there that helps people get into their government services, that helps support them on a day-to-day basis. Now, I guess today's topic, we've been talking about scams and the like. Today, we're going to talk about a totally different tack. And given that, part of what we do is provide some public service information around payments and, mums and dads that are getting on and they're getting the age pension or some sort of Services Australia payment. There's also a lot of confusion out there around how parents can help children. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So now they're your assets, ladies and gentlemen, and you've got the right to use your assets however you want to know, however you want. But you need to know that there are potential implications if you go out and help your kids with a purchase or with, providing them cash or whatever. And I think, Justin, it's really important that they understand, particularly if they are getting payments. But before we get into the meat and potatoes about that, does this information really matter to people that don't qualify for service payments at all? So they're independently self-sufficient. They've got a superannuation balance that they don't get any pension whatsoever. So this doesn't impact them whatsoever, does it?
Oh, well, it absolutely does. It just doesn't. What it means for your pensions makes no difference because they won't get one. But
right,
accessing the family home to help the kids is massive for estate planning. That's where the big thing falls apart. Because again, I say many times, there's nothing quite destroying the family like shoving a whole lot of cash in the middle of it and then letting the kids squabble over it and see where it goes. So I've got multiple children. I help one out, but I don't help the other. What does that mean for my will? What does that mean for powers of attorney into the future? Big implications, more than just what it means for the payment. From a Services Australia perspective, one of the reasons that we want to make sure you've got the information is because if you do a lot of this stuff, it's almost impossible to undo a lot of this stuff. And if you come to us after it's done, then we are just going to tell you the consequences, and those consequences could be massive. But you can't. It might be really almost impossible. Again,
you can't unwind
undoing it because it's not just. I mean, legally you might be able to, but it's expensive. But then you're still having, what's the implications for the child that I just gave some property to and now I'm taking their property away? What does that actually mean, again, longer term, but what does it mean for the payments? So talking to us and speaking to the Financial Information Service, which we've talked about before on this program, talking to us before you do, I'm thinking about it, I want to talk through the implications, that's great. You getting all the information, then you can make your decisions based on knowledge. Doing it and then coming to Services Australia afterwards and say, I just did this, that's not a problem. My home should be fine, isn't it? Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. So having the knowledge before you get into it, really important. Calling out, I should say out at the beginning, calling the Financial Information Service if you're talking about any of these topics, awesome thing to do because they're a great free service giving that information only. Give us a ring on 132300. There's 132300. Say the words Financial Information Service. When asked for the reason for your call, you'll then get to speak to one of us over the phone. They might be able to answer your question quite easily over the phone. Otherwise, they might make an appointment for you. If we are Northern Beaches, they're based out of Ringa Mall. So anybody in Ringa Mall, you'll be able to sit down and see them on the Northern Beaches, can sit down and talk to a Financial Information Service officer in Ringa Mall. They can help you from there. So I'm going to just put that in the outlet before we actually go into the details.
That's good. I'm just going to write that down for I have a friend that I want her to go and see this this office to get some help. But that's brilliant. So look, so if mum and dad want to help the kids buy a property, what kind of options do they have?
Well, there are four main aspects or paths to help the kids. So the first one is they become a part owner of the kids' property. They straight out lend money to the kids to buy the property. They give them the money to buy the property, or they go guarantor on buying the property. So we're gonna unpack all of those. But each one of those options certainly can have an implication if you're getting payments from Services Australia, but also can have really big implications even if you're not. As we talked about, legally, estate planning, kids hating each other and then hating you. So it's really important to know what you're getting yourself into.
Oh wow. Okay, so let's take off the first option.
Okay, so part owner of the kids' property. So the idea here is that the banks aren't particularly happy. The kids don't necessarily have enough assets in order to do that. So they want somebody who's got a decent asset behind them to help purchase the property. So look, mum and dad, they've got their own family home. Yeah, that's great. They've got a lot of security. Let's use them, put their name on the title deeds, because we can then mean we can access mum and dad's property as a way of security for the loan for the kids. So from a Services Australia's perspective, what that means is that you've actually bought yourself a new asset or part of an asset. So from a pension perspective, if you go and purchase a joint property with the kids, then your name is on the title deeds.
Hang on, just let me hold you up there for a moment. So even if you haven't put any money towards it, simply by being guarantor, you are now
Guarantor's different. Guarantor's different.
Sorry,
This is
sorry.
So we'll leave guarantor sort of like the one to the end. This is when this is when your actual name are on the title deed. So the banks actually want, because they want to be able to use mum and dad's home as a partial security for the loans for the mortgage, they want mum and dad's name on the title deed. So mum and dad now own a part of the property that the kids purchase.
Okay.
From that perspective, they actually either they're doing that, so they're buying partially buying the house for the kids, which means that they now have an asset because they own part of the home, or they've given the kids access to the title on their own home, which is the other thing that they might potentially do. So they're letting the kids partially own their property because the banks want the kids to have security in their name before they purchase the loan. So mum and dad put their name on their title in order to let the kids purchase the property. Now, again, if mum and dad's name's on the property, well, then that's an asset from Services Australia's perspective. If you're using your own home as a security for that loan, you've now created an asset that in effect didn't exist beforehand. And so we're going to count that. If you put the kid's name on your property, then there's a couple of issues. The first one is you're changing the title deeds. Now, anybody that's played with changing the title deeds knows that that means stamp duty is now involved. Yeah. And that's going to be expensive, because even if you're only changing 5% of the value of the property, they're going to do stamp duty on the whole property. And that's a massive cost by doing that. So first of all, you got to deal with the issues of stamp duty by changing title. Wow. Second issue is, from Services Australia, you have now gifted your kids part of your house. So you've now, whatever that percentage is, and again, if we're talking Northern Beaches, we're talking significant value of the property. Even if they own 5%, that's a gift. You've now given them you didn't get anything in return. You've now given the kids a proportion of the property. So you need to let us know, because the gifting has occurred. And third, and again, this is the estate planning side of things, the kids now own either you now own part of the kids' home, which means that theoretically you have a right to make decisions about the improvements and changes to their property, or they own part of your home. And how's that going to work with estate planning when you pass away, and the rights the kids have on your property when there are other children? So it sounds like it might be a simple solution, but the reality is it can be quite expensive. Certainly if you're looking at changing your own title deeds, it can be quite expensive. And where's that money coming from? Who's paying for the change of title deeds? It can be a gifting issue, and it also can be massive concern for, again, if there are other children involved, for estate planning, and for having who's got the right to say what about who.
Yeah, I've had estate planners on the show before, and these are very experienced people that have been doing it a long, long time. And I mean, I had somebody, when I was saying, how do you start this process? And they said, well, with a pen and paper is the way that you start this and start listing this down. But life isn't as simple as it used to potentially be, say, 50 years ago, because we've got blended marriages, we've got LGBTQ type relationships out there now. You've got second, third. I know some have got fourth marriages, which does my head in just beginning. Let's not even get into the money side of that does my head in a number of different ways. But
you're right. Certainly with the whole idea of the new families and the second level of kids and the first level of kids, like, why do we let my new partner's children get access to my property and name on the title deeds where my children didn't have access to my name on the title deeds? And exactly where does my estate work with that one? And how do I make this a fair and equitable arrangement? Now, all of this can be worked through. I mean, all of this can be perfectly legitimately worked through, but it's going to involve a lot of communication and explanation and understanding, and a family that's responsible that, like, this sibling is in more need. I acknowledge that, and we're happy to come up with a way to help them out. Or, more importantly, mum and dad's your house. Your house, knock yourself out. But with those blended families, it might be mum's house, but it's not dad's house. And so where do we, again, mum passes away. Where does dad stand? And now, whose kids? So real, we're talking, this is not something that you enter. I mean, and the main message this is not something you'd enter into lightly. This is something you want to get proper legal advice over. And this is something that you really want all the family to be sitting down in a big round table. Let's all talk this through. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, that could start fights just in of itself. But look, we're just about half time. This is fascinating stuff, Justin. We're here on Dollars and Making Sense with Justin Bott, who's the Media Information Officer from Services Australia. And today we are talking about the bank of mum and dad, I guess, how parents can get involved and help. Sometimes we're finding out that doesn't always help, but I think if your heart's in the right place, we can find a way. So look, we're going to take a short break. You're on Dollars and Making Sense. We're going to be back in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone Justin Bott, who is the Media Information Officer from Services Australia. You may know them as Centrelink. They also do Medicare and a whole range of different things. And I'm going to keep plugging this, but they also have a financial information service that involves telephone help, but also face-to-face help in your area of, that may be there close to you. But I think this is a valuable government service that, you may not be aware of. And I keep plugging it because financial professionals are not always easy to get a hold of. And when something's coming from the government free, I say, great, make use of it. And, I love giving freebies out at OTG Capital on Dollars and Making Sense. So, Justin, before we went to the break, we were talking about how mum and dads can get involved in helping their kids out. And there are some massive implications. But I'd like to move on a little bit about gifting. So tell the audience, what gets involved when mum and dad decide they're going to gift their kids or a child some of their assets.
Okay, so two other ways that you might think of helping out the kids is using money that you already got. So some of your investments that are already there to support your retirement, because you might have more than you need. they've got a need, you want to help look after them. So the two ways you might be able to do that is you give them the money or you lend them the money, and they're different. Now, the big issue, it might sound different, but the big issue is that there's no expectation. A gift, there's no expectation of the money being returned. A loan, there's an expectation that the money is going to be returned. Now, we'll deal with the gift first. So from Services Australia's perspective, it's your money. You can do whatever you like with it. There's no tax law that stops you from gifting. There's no Services Australia rule that says you're not allowed to gift, but we won't necessarily recognise everything that you've given away. So from Services Australia's perspective, you're allowed to give away $10,000 in a single financial year, but no more than $30,000 over a 5-year period. Anything that you gift away over that amount, we're going to pretend you've still got. We're going to put it in a pretend bank account, and it's going to generate pretend deemed interest, and it's going to sit there for 5 years. And it's only after 5 years that the gift will actually cease to be counted, and we'll recognise you don't have the money anymore. So say that you've got an easy 200,000 sitting in a bank and you want to help the kids purchase a new property. And so you just give them $200,000. So what the first thing we do is we reduce the bank account that you already have by the $200,000. So that, that $400,000 bank account is now a $200,000 bank account. We acknowledge the $10,000 that you're allowed to give. So that's gone. No worries. We then add back the $190,000 difference. And so you've got a $200,000 bank account plus a $190,000 excess gift. And that $190,000 excess gift is going to stay there for 5 years. And it's only after 5 years that we'll make that $190,000 excess gift go away, and we'll acknowledge that you don't have the money any longer.
Okay. Can I just quickly ask you then, in that case where you've given the 200K away, let's say it's over a nominal 5-year period, does that mean you've legitimately given away 40 grand a year?
No, you've done a one-off lump sum of $200,000, which means that we just acknowledge all the money's gone at that point. You could then give away $10,000 next year if you wanted to, because you've used only up to $10,000 in a single financial year.
Okay.
Then the event has occurred. I mean, if you wanted to break it down to spread that out, that's fine. But again, remembering the purpose, if the kids are trying to create a deposit from a property, getting it in a series of 5 $40,000 marks isn't going to help with that.
No, it doesn't make sense.
You want to give the money to that. Now, the reality is that before you gave the gift in that example, we said you had 400,000. After you gave the gift, we say you've got 390,000. So from a Services Australia's perspective, there isn't actually much difference in the pension that you were receiving, because we were counting the money beforehand, we're counting the money afterwards. The only time that doesn't really hold is when you've actually got the money from somewhere that we weren't looking at. And what we're talking about here is something like a reverse mortgage, where you've dipped into the family home, to which we don't count, and you've taken a lump of cash out of that and made something that we look at from something that we didn't look at. Now, at that point, it doesn't matter whether you gift it away or you keep it in your bank account. You created an asset that you didn't have beforehand, and that can potentially be counted and affect your rate of payment. So gifting, we deduct it by the $10,000 that you're allowed to straight away, and then after 5 years, the money disappears. Loans are different. With a loan, the full value of that loan is going to be counted again as a deemed financial asset, but for the life of the loan. And it's really important to say here that there's no requirement that you get interest. That's entirely between you and the family. There doesn't even necessarily have to be documentation, though we do recommend it, because families do these sorts of things. So if I then, same scenario, had $400,000 in the bank and then lent $200,000 to my kids, we would have the $200,000 that I left in the bank plus the full $200,000 loan. And that $200,000 loan is going to stay there until the kids repay it, which the kids may never do, which means that, forget this 5 years, the money disappears. It may be there for 10, 15, 20 years. And it may be that it gets to a point, say in 10 years, you realize they're never going to pay that money back. We're just going to, again, estate planning issues aside, we're just going to forgive the loan, acknowledge we're never going to get the money back. Then you've gifted it. And it's only then that the 5-year gifting implication starts.
Then it starts from there.
So we take the $10,000 off at that point, and you've got to wait. You've got to wait another 5 years in order for that to be repaid. Now,
you see where you're coming from. That's a big impact.
Yes. Now, but from an estate planning perspective, properly documented loans means that when we pass away, we can use that documented loan as a way of offsetting the estate planning for the other children, all those sorts of bits and pieces. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to have it as a loan rather than a gift. But from a Services Australia's perspective, certainly if the kids, if the kids are repaying it and you're telling us all the time the money's being repaid, the loan's getting smaller and smaller, then it's not really going to make much of a difference. But if there really is no intention for that money to be repaid, you really have to think through, is a loan the best way for us to work, or should we just acknowledge this is a gift?
It's a gift, yeah.
Except the 5 years. But again, that's just from a Services Australia's perspective. From a legal perspective, from a wills perspective, massive differences in between those two implications.
Oh, are there ever?
If there are other kids, you've really got to work these sorts of things through.
I must say, you mentioned reverse mortgages. I've often been asked about them. I know about them. I certainly say to many people, tread very, very carefully. But it certainly it springs to mind. Maybe we do another topic at another time about the impact, because I wasn't aware that having a reverse mortgage could impact pension payments in that manner. And so I think it's worthy that we'll pursue that another time, Justin.
Happy to.
Yeah, but it's something that we get asked a lot about. I don't touch them because there are ethical things around reverse mortgages that I have basic issues with. They're a legitimate product. They're not illegal. So, ladies and gentlemen, I make that clear. They're not illegal. That doesn't necessarily mean they're necessarily good, but that's just neither here nor there. So let's move on. So sure. We've talked about assessing gifts. So let's talk quickly. We're running out of time, but going guarantor.
Guarantor is a great one. So going guarantor is where you actually, it's sort of in the title, you promise that you will cover if the kids can't cover. So you promise that you and your property will cover any loans if the kids default. You'll cover any repayments if the kids default. But you don't have to actually do anything. If the kids do everything that they're supposed to do, you're just going to sit in the background. You're just a level of security that may never be called on, and hopefully is never called on, and everything's fine. Now, from a Services Australia's perspective, if you go guarantor, that means nothing at all. Going guarantor has no implications whatsoever. If the kids do everything the kids are supposed to do, you going guarantor will have no impact on your eligibility whatsoever, and everything will be fine. The problem comes when the kids default, because when you go guarantor, if the kids don't meet the payments, you have to make the payments. Now, if you're making the payments, what you are in effect doing is using your money to cover somebody else's debt and getting nothing in return, and that is a gift. So any repayment that you make as a guarantor is going to be treated as a gift and is going to be treated under those gifting requirements of $10,000 in a single financial year.
With the 10K then start applying in that instance.
Yep, and no more than 30,000 over a 5-year period. And the 30,000 over a 5-year period is actually now more likely because you'll be potentially doing them here and there. It might take a couple of years. I might only reach 7,000 in this financial year because they only needed bits of help. But then I added another 7,000 the year after that, and then now I'm starting to move up to the 30,000 mark. So if you are doing a guarantor arrangement and you're making ad hoc payments here and there, you actually need to let us know every time you do one, and we will do the maths so when it adds up to and do you actually reach over. Now, all of that might be, it's annoying and it's not big money, but it might be something that's manageable. The big problem comes if the kids can't pay and you can't pay because the mortgage has to be repaid, and you've just put your home as a guarantor for that to happen.
The chopping block, and that's going
to be the banks are going to say, "We'll have that, thank you very much," and that's what you've legally got yourself into.
And let's be clear here, ladies and gentlemen, banks are there for business. They're not bleeding hearts places. If you don't pay, they'll take your house, and it may take them 3, 6, 9 months, but if you don't pay, at the end of the day, we have full recourse borrowing in this country. I've often heard this jingle bell thing where in America they jingle the keys into the letterbox and they walk away. That doesn't happen here. We have full recourse borrowing, and if you don't pay or your kids don't pay and you've gone guarantor, you will lose your house. Be under no assumption that they'll take pity on you because you're old age pensioners. They will take your house. Justin,
you've given them the authority. Now, very quickly, the other issues for that.
Sure.
First of all, that is a huge gift because you've not only have you had to sell the home, you've just had to give that whole amount to the kids. So that's a massive gift. Between the two of them, that might be the end of your payments. But on top of that, imagine the Christmas conversation when you're all sitting around the table in the rental property that you're living at that you had to sell up because the kids didn't make the arrangements. So again, massive, not just Services Australia concerns, massive concerns about estate planning, your legal situation, your living situation. What is
Structure
that
of
going
a
to mean?
family.
And also aged care concerns and all those sorts of bits and pieces. So big concerns. If everything goes according to plan, it can be perfect with minimal impact. If something happens, partner loses a job, becomes unemployed, can't make the repayments, you're now up for bat. So understanding all of the legal implications before you do any of these is absolutely essential. FIS can absolutely help.
All righty. So let's wrap up. Where can people go for more information?
Financial Information Service is a great place to just talk through concepts. It's all about what ifs with them, and they're perfectly happy to have a chat about your particular circumstances. Yeah. So ring us on 132300. Say the words Financial Information Service to let them know, and they'll put you through to one of their offices. Yeah. If you do have one at your local service centre, they'll book an appointment for you if that's where you need to go. Otherwise, you can do an online conference just like we're doing, and you can have a chat with them over your computer and still give you the information that you need, because information will keep you as safe as you can be. Understanding what you're getting yourself into is the really important part.
It's a free service, ladies and gentlemen.
The free service is just information. If you see the consequences and you can accept the consequences, then that's fine. It's still your decision and you're right. But understand everything that might be in play when you look at doing these sorts of things.
Justin, we're out of time. Excellent stuff. Really, really good show. Thanks for being on Dollars and Making Sense. And until next time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.